My name is Vesper Lynn, 36 years old. He wouldn't cross the threshold. He just stood there in my doorway like the hallway tiles belonged to someone richer, taller, louder. My son, 13, already squinting down at me the way boys do when they outgrow their childhood angles, wore a jersey with someone else's last name stitched across his shoulders in fat, perfect letters. "I'm done with your name," he said. "Mara," his stepmother, says real families share names. I want hers. Behind him, my ex leaned on the jamb as if the building had been designed for his posture. He had the relaxed smirk of a man who believes a courtroom is just a stage with better lighting. Mara stood a half step back in Pilates black, a hand on his arm like a subtitle. "He's old enough to decide, Vesper," my ex said, watching my face instead of our son. "You could fight it, but we both know you can't afford a war." The hall smelled like someone else's dinner and lemon cleaner. Inside my apartment, the cheap fan hummed like a throat clearing. I looked at the boy I taught to tie his shoes and pitch a tent and laugh at my terrible ghost stories, and all I could hear was the word he used for me last month when I asked about homework. Loser. "Fine," I said. My ex blinked. Mara's eyebrows twitched. The boy looked triumphant? Relieved? Something brittle. "You heard your mother," my ex said brightly, patting his shoulder. "Let's go. We've got a real family dinner to get to." He turned away without coming in. Mara's perfume moved with her, cool and expensive. She didn't meet my eyes, but I caught the curl of a smile at the corner of her mouth, the kind women wear when the bill lands somewhere else. I closed the door on the sound of their elevator. The apartment inhaled and exhaled once, like a thing that had been punched and was pretending it hadn't. I stood in the square of light on the floor where he would have dropped his backpack and asked if there was any pizza left, where I would have lied and said yes. On the table sat a stack of bills I'd already paid. Rent, electric, the $300 child support that left my account like clockwork each month for 3 years, while their Instagram bled sunlight and ocean and plates of food that cost my entire week's groceries. I boiled ramen without tasting it and set the bowl on the counter and didn't touch it. The next morning, I called Elena, the only lawyer who had ever talked to me like the ground under my feet was real. "You're sure?" she asked. "Name change and step-parent adoption?" "Yes. There's no going back, Vesper. Once you sign, the law won't pretend you exist." "I know," I said. "Draw it up." "Your ex's counsel will trip over themselves to file," she said dryly. "I'll nudge, gently. But remember, when a step-parent adopts, all obligations transfer. Child support, medical, school." I said nothing. She knew better than to mistake my quiet for ignorance. "We'll need to schedule a consent hearing," Elena added. "It can be quick if everyone's eager." "They are," I said. I could hear Mara's voice in my head. Real families share names, a brand slogan disguised as a principle. I signed every page like my hand belonged to someone else. Black ink, white paper, month of ramen, year of double shifts, a decade of bedtime stories, translated into neat lines and boxes, consent, termination, adoption by spouse. My ex texted me a thumbs up and a champagne emoji. "Mature of you, Vess. Best for everyone." Mara added a heart. "We'll make sure he celebrates with a fishing trip this weekend." 3 business days later, Elena called. "Judge signed at 8:57 a.m., she said. "It's done." "Okay," I said. My voice didn't reach the bottom of me. "I'll send certified copies," she continued, "for your records." "For my shoebox," I said. I didn't mean to say it like that. "Vesper," she said, the way people do when they're choosing each word. "If you get calls about money, school, doctor's forms, remember, the ink isn't just dry. It's law." At my second job that night, stocking pallets at the warehouse that smelled like cardboard and hot plastic, my phone buzzed so hard it almost skittered off the shelf. I didn't answer the first call, or the second. I answered the third because the panic in it sounded like an alarm clock I didn't set. "What did you do?" my ex demanded. Panic can make even a smirk sound thin. "Exactly what you wanted," I said. I slid a box cutter into shrink wrap and watched it peel like skin. "A judge did it, actually." "Mara just spoke to the school," he said, like the word itself should change my mind. They said you're not on the account anymore." "I'm not on anything anymore," I said. "You can't just—" "I already did," I said, and hung up. A box thumped open at my feet. Inside, 47 pairs of size small soccer socks nobody on the fancy field would wear twice. When I got home after midnight, there was a thick cream envelope waiting, my name written in a tidy, practiced hand. The crest embossed in the corner could have paid my electric bill twice. Dear Ms. Lynn, as you may know, the annual tuition is $42,000. Historically, accounts list 2 guardians. Our records now reflect a legal step-parent adoption. Financial obligations transfer accordingly. Please be advised that payment is due by August 15th, or enrollment will be withdrawn. Head of school. I set the letter down and laughed. Not a mean laugh, a relieved one, the kind that sounds like a ladder being pulled up after you climb. The phone lit my kitchen again. New number, unknown voice. Vesper, please. Not a smirk now. Small, chipped. I didn't realize. That adoption means being a parent, I asked. Don't do this. I'm not doing anything, I said. I'm not anything. You made sure of that. The line choked on static and then on silence. At 2 a.m., a voicemail arrived. My son's voice sounded younger than 13 and older than I ever let myself imagine. Mom, he said. He stumbled on the word as if his tongue didn't know how to carry it anymore. Can we talk? Mara says we need to fix it. Please call back. I put the phone face down. The apartment made its small night noises. The fridge, the pipes, the tired fan insisting it mattered. I lay on my back on the bed and traced the ceiling cracks until they turned into a river. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor coughed in his sleep. Somewhere uptown, a woman rehearsed what she'd say to a bursar's office. Somewhere in between, a 13-year-old learned that names weren't just letters. They were contracts. In the morning, I ate the ramen I hadn't eaten yesterday. Then I went to work. By lunch the next day, my phone sounded like a trapped bee. Unknown numbers. Known numbers wearing masks. I put it face down in my desk drawer at the city permit office and let the buzzer shake the pencils. Across from me, the wall clock ticked the way clocks do in government buildings. Steady, unimpressed. A man argued about a setback variance. I stamped the form and pointed to the code section the way a lifeguard points to the no diving sign after the splash. On my break, I took the phone to the courtyard and skimmed the notifications. 28 missed calls, 4 voicemails, a text from my ex in a tone I hadn't heard since before the divorce. We need to talk, Vess. Please. A text from Mara with too many exclamation points to be sincere. Let's be adults about this. And from a number I didn't recognize. Head of school requesting updated payment method for Vesper Lynn's child. Updated payment method. The world is a banquet of euphemisms. I forwarded the email to Elena. For your records, I wrote. She replied in 60 seconds. This is their tab now. Do not answer finance questions. Refer all inquiries to the adoptive parent. My ex tried a new tactic that afternoon. Nostalgia weaponized. Remember when we took him camping at Clear Lake? He had a fever and you slept sitting up so he could breathe. You're not that cold, Vess. You can't be. I typed, deleted. Then I settled on what Elena had taught me. The clean line that cuts through fog. Please direct all financial and custodial matters to the adoptive parent. He called immediately. Don't do the robot thing with me, he said. You're better than this. I'm exactly this, I said. A person who pays her own bills and no one else's. You're punishing a child. I'm obeying a court order. You engineered it. Silence, casual violence, then quieter. We can't afford it. Something inside me, meaner than I like to admit, wanted to say, then you should have thought of that before teaching him my name was disposable. Instead, I let the mean thing pass through me and out the other side. Public school is free, I said. Lots of good ones. Roosevelt has a decent algebra teacher. He'll survive. You don't understand, he said, because men who've been cushioned their whole lives believe understanding replaces money. The house, the cars, everything's leveraged. It's a pretty word for rented, I said. Good luck. He was still talking when I hung up. That night, the pantry stared back like a mouth missing teeth. I made rice and fried an egg and ate it standing up over the sink while the neighbor's television laughed at a joke I couldn't hear. I opened the drawer where I keep receipts and found the stack of supermarket points I'd saved without noticing. Loyalty programs no longer felt like a small humiliation. They felt like armor. At 10:14, a voicemail arrived from my son. He tried Mom again. It stuck this time. Mom, it's me. Can we fix this? I didn't mean it. I mean, I did, but I don't know what I mean. He inhaled raggedly. I miss hiking. I miss the stupid ghost stories. He was quiet for a beat. Mara says you're being cruel on purpose. Please call back. I put the phone down and chose not to cry. Not because I'm strong, because I was tired. There's a difference. 3 days later, an envelope slid under my apartment door with a legal letterhead that looked like it had been designed to make poor people apologize. Different firm, cheaper font. Petition to vacate consent and reinstate child support. Our clients contend consent was obtained under duress and without full disclosure of material consequences. I laughed out loud. It startled me more than the letter. I sent a photo to Elena with the caption, "They think I tricked them into getting exactly what they demanded." She called seconds later, delighted. "This is my Super Bowl," she said. "They're alleging you hid the part of adoption law everyone learns in Family Law 101. Can they unwind it?" "No," she said, satisfied. "They can embarrass themselves efficiently, though. The judge assigned hates performative ignorance." "What do you need from me?" "Nothing," she said, "except not to text your ex anything quotable. We'll file a response and a counter for fees. Court in 6 weeks. Wear something that makes you feel like gravity." I hung up and stared at my ceiling again. The crack I'd traced into a river now looked like a road. The school sent a second letter a week later, this one less polite. "Final notice. Payment overdue. If we do not receive funds by the 15th, enrollment will be terminated. Please note, financial aid applications are closed for the term." Mara texted a screenshot of the letter with a caption that made the phone feel heavier. "You're ruining his future." I replied with a single line, "Please direct all financial and custodial matters to the adoptive parent." I muted the thread. Then I took a long, slow shower and let the water beat the part of me that wanted to be the rescuer into an agreeable, temporary silence. That weekend, I worked the warehouse shift I used to call my second life. We stacked pallets. We counted tape. We moved the same boxes from one place to another like faithless prayers. My forearms ached. The ache felt like an old friend. On my break, I scrolled through my old photos. The boy at 8, forehead sweaty under a headlamp, proud of a lopsided tent. The boy at 10, mouth ringed with blue from a snow cone. The boy at 12, scowling in a uniform he'd pretended not to like. I could taste the cheap hot dogs and the dust, and the way the stadium lights made everyone look heroic, even the people selling foam fingers. I closed the album. Memory is a narcotic if you dose it wrong. 2 weeks before the hearing, the head of school called me herself. Her voice was the expensive kind, warm enough to be human, firm enough to sign checks not hers. "Ms. Lynn, we're revising our records," she said. "Given the legal change, you're no longer the financial contact. But I wanted to reach out, parent to parent." "I'm not a parent anymore," I said, and surprised myself with how level it sounded. "You are," she said, not unkindly, "whether the registrar recognizes you or not. I wanted you to know. We will hold his spot for 10 more days. After that, we must move to the wait list. I hope the family finds resolution." "So do I said, "truly." I hung up and stood very still and realized that honesty can be heavier than grief. The text changed tone after that. Less smug, more frantic. From my ex, "Can we meet?" From Mara, "I'm sorry for the things I said." From my son, "They're fighting. Please answer." I didn't. Not because I wanted them to suffer, because I had learned the hard way that stepping in to hold someone else's consequences kept them from learning their own name. 3 nights later, my son sent one more message. It wasn't accusatory or pleading. It was so simple, it ruined me for an hour. "Do you think names can be mistakes?" I stared at it until the letters blurred. Then I put the phone down, washed my one wineglass, dried it, and set it upside down on the towel like a small white flag. The morning of the hearing, I woke before the alarm. The city was still charcoal, the sky a bruise waiting to bloom. I ironed the only suit that made me stand straight without trying. In the mirror, I looked like a woman who had learned to live within the math of her life. The courthouse smelled like paper and disinfectant and old decisions. Elena met me on the steps in a coat that meant business and comfort at the same time. She handed me a copy of our brief. Concise, merciless, boring, the best kind. "Deep breath," she said. "Shallow ones got me here," I said, and we both smiled. We sat at the respondents' table. Across the aisle, my ex looked deflated. Not broke, exactly, but unraveled. Mara's ponytail was too tight. Their lawyer was young enough to still believe precedent bends for people who say, but with conviction. The judge entered. with the quiet authority of someone who had been disappointed by humans professionally for decades. She looked at the pleadings, then at us, then back down. "Counsel," she said to the other side, "you're asking me to reverse a valid step-parent adoption because your clients did not realize adopting a child makes you a parent. Is that correct?" "Your Honor, they were not made aware." "By whom?" the judge asked. "Gravity? The dictionary?" She tapped a page. "The statute is clear. Termination of parental rights terminates obligations. Adoption assigns them elsewhere. You had counsel. You celebrated it." She peered over her glasses. Buyer's remorse is not a legal theory. Their lawyer began to argue duress. The judge held up a hand the size of a gavel. "Motion denied," she said. "Costs to the plaintiffs." Then, as if she were tying a small bow no one else could see, "And counselor, read your client the statute before you file your next Hail Mary." Her gavel barely made a sound. Some endings don't need noise. Outside the courtroom, the air tasted like copper pennies and rain. Elena squeezed my shoulder. "You did beautifully." "I didn't do anything," I said. "You didn't move," she said. "That's something." Across the hall, my ex and Mara were arguing in whispers that weren't quiet enough. I caught only a shard, tuition, before a door closed between us. I was halfway down the steps when I saw him, not in a uniform, not in a jersey, just a kid, shoulders hunched, hair in his eyes. He looked smaller than he had in my doorway. "Can we talk?" he asked. I looked at Elena. She nodded and drifted toward the curb to give us space. We sat on a stone bench, wet with last night's rain. The courthouse windows reflected a sky trying to be blue and not quite there yet. "I heard everything," he said, staring at his hands. "In there." "So did I said. "Did you," he swallowed, "did you ever love me? Or did you just love having a kid?" It was a fair question, maybe the only fair one he'd asked in a year. "I loved you," I said. "The you who collected rocks and fell asleep in the car with your mouth open. The you who cried when the goldfish died and then cried because you were embarrassed you cried. The you who believed me when I said the night noises were the building settling and not ghosts." He blinked hard, then, "Can we, I don't know, start over?" "Starting over is for computers," I said gently. "We can start from here." "What does that mean?" "It means we can talk sometimes," I said. "If you want. But there are conditions." His mouth lifted out of the corner. "There are always conditions with you." "Respect," I said. "Truth. And understand, I'm not your ATM. I'm not your backup plan." I softened it with a breath. "I'm just me." He nodded. "Okay." We sat with that for a while, letting the map redraw itself in pencil instead of pen. I walked back to Elena's car, shoes damp, suit wrinkling in ways I decided not to care about. She handed me a tissue I pretended not to need. "Next?" she asked. "Lunch," I said. "Work, life." "And 6 weeks from now," she said, "when the school year starts?" I pictured public school hallways with scuffed floors and a math teacher who gave up her lunch to tutor and a boy in a t-shirt without a brand name on it. It looked fine. It looked real. "Next," I said, "we find out what names mean when there's no tuition attached." The courthouse cafeteria smelled like burned coffee and fear. I didn't eat, neither did he. My ex-husband sat 2 tables away, pretending to read his phone while his new wife whispered into her cup like it contained the answer to their ruin. The adoption appeal had been denied hours ago, but denial doesn't register right away. It has to sink in, past ego, past panic, all the way into the bone where realization finally hurts. My lawyer, Elena, nudged a paper toward me. "Sign here for court costs. They're covering everything." "Everything?" I asked, pen hovering. She smiled like a chess player. $15,000 of everything. I signed without flinching. It wasn't vengeance. It was interest accrued on disrespect. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the air was still bruised. That's when I saw him, my son, standing in the building's shadow, backpack slung over one shoulder, his posture the same mix of guilt and defiance I used to see when he was caught sneaking cookies before dinner. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Outside's fine," I said. We sat on the courthouse steps, the stones still damp under us. He looked smaller than I remembered, his expensive haircut grown out, his shirt untucked, sleeves rolled halfway like he was tired of pretending to be someone else. "I heard what the judge said," he started, "that you don't owe me anything anymore." "That's correct," I said. "Do you hate me?" I stared straight ahead, watching a woman rush across the street with an umbrella. "No." "Then why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Acting like I'm not your son." I turned to him then. "Because that's what you told me, remember? That you didn't want to be mine." He flinched. I was mad. I didn't mean it. You meant it enough to wear another family's name, I said. You meant it enough to let your mother and stepmother treat me like a charity project. Tears started filling his eyes, and for a second I hated myself for noticing the way he wiped them with the back of his hand, the same way I used to. I didn't understand what it meant, he whispered. Any of it. Actions have consequences, I said softly. Now you do. For a while we sat in silence. Then he said, they can't afford the school. Mara's business fell apart. Dad's been different. He blames me. Blames you for what? For everything, his voice cracked. He said I ruined his life, that he never wanted a kid, just Mom. I exhaled slowly. That's not on you. He looked at me, desperate. Then why does it feel like it is? Because guilt, I thought, is hereditary. Instead, I said, you're 13. It's not your job to fix grown-ups who broke themselves. He nodded, staring down at the courthouse steps. Then quietly, do you think you'll ever forgive me? The question wasn't just about the name. It was about everything. The distance, the words, the way he'd look through me like I was wallpaper in a house he'd outgrown. I wanted to tell him forgiveness isn't a lightning bolt. It's erosion. Slow, quiet, deliberate. Maybe, I said, but not today. He swallowed hard. That's fair. When he stood to leave, I saw the way his hands trembled. He turned back once. Mom says we're selling the house. I didn't ask where they'd go. I already knew. The fall is always longer for people who climb with borrowed ladders. A month later, the letter came. Petition for bankruptcy, filed by Derek and Mara Whitmore. I skimmed it at my kitchen table, tracing the bolded numbers with a fingertip. Mortgage default, foreclosed assets, $42,000, unpaid tuition, credit card debt stacked like dominoes. The same man who'd called me a loser now owed more than I'd ever earned in a year. Elena called 5 minutes later, voice fizzing with caffeine and disbelief. They're finished, she said. Everything's imploding. She's filing for divorce. Of course she was. The moment money vanished, so did the marriage. What about my son? I asked. He's enrolled in public school now. Roosevelt Middle. Irony's a comedian. That night, I sat on the balcony with a glass of cheap wine and the sound of rain against the railing. For years, I'd worked myself raw to pay for a life that mocked me from curated photos and captions about gratitude. Now those same filters couldn't hide the cracks. The city lights blurred in the drizzle. I thought about him, my son, in a classroom without tuition, without status. Maybe for the first time, he'd meet kids who understood value instead of price. The thought should have satisfied me. It didn't. A week later, my phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Lynn, a woman's voice said, this is Principal Hendricks from Roosevelt Middle School. I'm calling about your son. My chest tightened. What happened? He's fine physically, but there was an incident. He got into a fight. I sat down. What kind of fight? The other student made comments about his name. Your son threw the first punch. Where are his guardians? We called them. No answer. You're still listed as emergency contact. I looked at the clock. I had a client meeting in 20 minutes, a stack of permits to sign. None of it mattered. I'll be there in 15. When I arrived, the nurse's office smelled like antiseptic and disappointment. He sat on the cot, eye swollen, knuckles scabbed, staring at the floor. You came, he whispered. Of course I did. Principal Hendricks briefed me. Zero tolerance policy, 3-day suspension. I nodded through the formality. When she left, it was just us. Does it hurt? I asked. He nodded. Good, I said. He blinked. Good? Pain teaches. Maybe faster than pride does. He almost smiled. You're still weird. And you're still mouthy. A beat passed. They called me a fake, he said finally. Said my real mom didn't want me. What did you tell them? That they don't know anything. He paused. But it still felt true. I crouched beside him so we were eye level. Listen to me. You are not unwanted. You are the result of 2 adults making a mess and one of them refusing to clean it up. That's not on you. Tears welled up again, but he blinked them back. I'm sorry. I know. We drove in silence. Halfway home, he whispered, Can I stay with you for a while? I can't, I said softly. Not yet. Not legally. But you'll figure things out, I said. It's what kids do when adults disappoint them. He stared out the window, his reflection a blur in the glass. Mara's gone. She moved back to her parents. And your father? Working, drinking, mostly yelling. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel. I'm sorry. Don't be, he said. I think I'm learning what you meant about consequences. When we reached my building, I handed him a cold compress for his eye and a sandwich wrapped in foil. He looked around my small apartment, the secondhand furniture, the stack of bills. "It's tiny," he said. "It's mine," I replied. He nodded, taking a bite. "Were you really eating ramen every day?" "For a while," I said. "Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered?" He didn't answer. That night, after he left, I found myself staring at the framed photo on my bookshelf, the two of us at Clear Lake, sunburned and grinning, his small hand gripping mine. He used to call me Momster because I'd wake him for school singing off-key. I used to pretend to hate it. I didn't know I'd miss it. 2 weeks later, court papers arrived, finalizing my ex-bankruptcy. At the bottom, in neat serif font, was the line, "Custodial parent maintains all financial responsibility." Every dollar, every debt, every promise, all his. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like quiet. Because the truth is, revenge is never as loud as regret. And sometimes the sweetest justice is watching the people who hurt you realize they taught the wrong lessons. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was walking home from the permit office, the kind of gray spring day where even the light looked tired. "Ms. Lynn?" The voice on the line was professional, clipped. "This is Officer Raymond with Child Protective Services." For a second, I thought it was another mistake. Wrong number, wrong file. But then he said it. "I'm calling about your son." My knees went soft. "He's not," I started, then stopped. "What happened?" His tone stayed steady, the way voices do when they've said the same sentence too many times. "There was a domestic incident. His father, Derek Whitmore, was arrested for assaulting his wife. Your son is currently with us. We're seeking a temporary guardian while the investigation proceeds." "He's not my legal responsibility anymore," I said quietly. "You know that." "Yes, ma'am, but his mother listed you as an emergency contact. Says you've been involved lately, that he'd feel safest with you." I stopped at the corner, traffic roaring past. The city looked normal. Buses, laughter, dogs, but it all sounded far away. "How long?" I asked. "Could be a few days. Could be longer. We'll need an answer by tomorrow morning." He hung up. I stood there for 10 minutes, staring at my reflection in the store window. I looked like someone who was supposed to have moved on, someone who should have been free. But the truth was, I never stopped checking my phone at 7 p.m., the time he used to call for goodnight stories. That night, I called my lawyer. "You're joking," Elena said after I explained. "You fought to get out of this. Don't dive back into the same fire." "I'm not diving," I said. "I'm standing at the edge. There's a difference." "Not legally. If you take guardianship, you'll have no authority, no protection, no say in his future. Just responsibility." "I know. You'll get hurt again." "Maybe," I said. "But not showing up might hurt worse." She sighed. "You always did have a weakness for lost causes." "He's not a lost cause," I said. "He's just a kid who finally learned what consequences look like." The next morning, I drove to the CPS office. He was sitting on a plastic chair in the lobby, backpack at his feet, eyes hollow but hopeful. When he saw me, he stood too fast, nearly knocking the chair over. "You came," he said. "Yeah," I said softly. "I came." The caseworker handed me a folder. "You'll be his guardian until further notice. You're not his legal parent, but you can sign for school, doctor's visits, basic needs." I nodded. "Understood." "Thank you," she said quietly. He needed someone. So did I, though I didn't say it out loud. The apartment felt different with another heartbeat inside it. He moved cautiously, like the floor might break under him. I showed him the spare room, the one I'd never really decided what to do with. "This is yours," I said, "while you're here." He looked around at the plain furniture, the clean sheets, the desk by the window. "It's nice." "It's small," I said, "but it's ours." He smiled a little. "Thank you." Dinner that night was spaghetti. Cheap, simple, familiar. He twirled the noodles, eyes on his plate. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you say yes?" "Because you needed someone too. You don't owe me anything." "I know," I said, "but sometimes we show up because it's right, not because we owe." He nodded, staring at his fork. "I'm going to do better this time," he said. "I promise I won't mess it up." "Just be you," I said. "That's all I ask." Weeks became months. Routine settled in. Morning breakfast, school drop-offs, homework at the kitchen table, weekend hikes. He called me Mom again, not cautiously, not out of habit, naturally. And each time, it felt less like reopening a wound and more like stitching something new. He started smiling more, sleeping better. He even joined the school's soccer team. The first time he scored a goal, he ran straight to the sidelines, scanning the crowd. When he saw me cheering, his grin split his face like sunrise. That night, I found the medal sitting on my pillow with a note. "For the person who showed up." 3 months later, the call came again. His mother had completed her court-mandated therapy. She'd gotten a stable job, rented a small apartment, and petitioned to have him returned. He was leaving in a week. I made his favorite dinner, chicken tacos, and we ate mostly in silence. "I don't want to go," he said finally. "I know. It feels like I'm losing you again." "You're not," I said. "You'll always know where to find me." He looked at me, tears welling. "Promise?" "Promise," I said, and meant it. The day he moved out, I helped carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs. His mother stood at the door, nervous but grateful. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything." I looked at her for a long moment. "I did it for him, not for you." She nodded. "Still, thank you." That first night without him, the apartment felt strange. Quiet, but not lonely. I made tea, sat by the window, and looked at the empty room that had once been his. For the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt. Because this time, the goodbye wasn't broken. This time it was honest. A year later, I got a call from his school. He'd been nominated for an award, Most Improved Student. The ceremony was next week. I showed up in my best suit, the one that fit better now because I could finally breathe. When they called his name, he walked across that stage with confidence I hadn't seen in years. He looked out into the crowd, saw me in the back, and smiled. After the ceremony, he ran up, holding the certificate. "I did it," he said. "I know," I said, pulling him into a hug. "I'm proud of you." He grinned. "I'm thinking about studying engineering, building things that last." "Good choice," I said. "The world always needs more builders." That night, as I dropped him back at his mother's, he turned to me. "Do you forgive me?" he asked. I took a breath. The air was cool, sharp. "Yeah," I said. "I already did." He smiled through tears. "Thank you for showing up." "Always," I said. "That's what real family does." And for once, he believed me. A full year passed before I realized what forgiveness really felt like. It wasn't fireworks, it was routine. Phone calls every Thursday, lunch on the first Saturday of each month, occasional texts about grades, about a new song he liked, about life. The anger that used to live in my chest like a tenant finally moved out. In its place was something quieter, steadier, something that looked suspiciously like peace. He was 14 now, taller, voice deeper, still the same crooked smile that made me forgive him before I even decided to. One evening after dinner, as we walked toward the parking lot of our usual diner, he hesitated by the curb. "Mom," he said. He said it like breathing. No hesitation, no test of whether it would sting. "I'm changing my name back." The words landed somewhere between shock and joy. "Back?" I asked. He nodded. "Back to Lynn, back to yours." "You know it doesn't change the law," I said softly. "He's still—" "I know," he interrupted, "but names matter. You taught me that." I smiled. "It's not an easy process." "I already looked it up," he said proudly. "The school counselor's helping me with the forms." "Why now?" He shoved his hands in his pockets. "Because that name, his, never fit. It's like wearing shoes that look nice but cut your feet open." He looked up at me then. "I want to be proud of the name on my report card, the one that actually means something." When I got home that night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the city breathe under streetlights. For so long, I'd seen that skyline as a reminder of everything I'd lost. Now, it just looked like possibility. On my phone was a text from my ex, the first in months. "Vesper, I know we don't talk, but I need to say this. You saved him. When I couldn't, when Derek wouldn't, you did. Thank you." I stared at the message, half expecting it to dissolve. Then I typed back, "You don't owe me anything. We're good." And I meant it. Because good didn't mean reconciliation. It meant closure. It meant knowing the wound had healed enough to stop defining the body. 6 months later, his school invited me to an honors ceremony. This time, he wasn't just most improved. He was at the top of his class. When he stepped on stage to accept his certificate, they announced him as Eli Lynn. Hearing it out loud was like a chord resolving after years of dissonance. He found me in the crowd, grinning that same wide, sunlit grin, and mouthed, "I did it." Afterward, we went for ice cream. He ordered the same flavor he'd chosen every year since he was 5. Cookies and cream, always in a cup, never a cone, because he hated when it dripped on his hands. Between spoonfuls, he said, "Mom, do you think people can change?" I smiled. "People can, but they have to want to." He nodded. "I think I finally do." His mother came by later that summer to pick him up for a family trip. She'd aged in the way grief makes people look softer, not weaker. There were no designer sunglasses, no sharp heels, just jeans, sneakers, and humility. "Thank you," she said quietly. I studied her face. "For what?" for giving him back the parts I broke. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but maybe it didn't need to be. Just make sure you don't lose them again, I said. She nodded. I won't. That night, after the door closed behind them, I walked into the spare room, the one that used to be his. The desk still sat by the window. The medal he'd won for soccer hung from the lamp. A single sticky note on the desk read, "Thanks for always showing up." I sat on the bed and let myself cry, not out of sadness, but out of gratitude. Because I realized something simple but profound. Parenthood isn't about blood or court papers or even last names. It's about presence. Showing up when it's hard, loving when it's inconvenient, staying when everyone expects you to walk away. The years ahead will have their storms, college applications, heartbreaks, jobs, life. But whatever happens, I know this. He'll face them with the right name, the right lessons, and a spine built from every time he fell and stood back up. And me? I'll keep living, building, and showing up. Not because the law says I have to, but because love, the real kind, doesn't need permission. It just needs you to mean it.